Afternoon, everyone. Capt. Karl Burnside here with Thumbs Up Charter Services. Welcome to another video session of Thumbs Up Charter Services behind the scenes, where we continue to work to restore the Ambrose, and specifically we're still working on the Ambrose's trailer. Today we're going to work on the hydraulic side of the brake system and get some hydraulic tubing in, hopefully cut and flared and hooked up to the existing brake system on the boat in the tongue, and also to the new surge brake system that we mounted on the front of the tongue a few sessions ago. After that, we're hoping to be able to bleed the system to actually get the brakes to work. And usually that step requires two people. I actually had an epiphany of an idea of how maybe I can do it with one. We'll see how well that works. We might end up having to stop and wait for somebody to help us out, but we're going to give it the old college try, as they say. But first we'll show you the flare kit for brake tubing, show you the various tools that are in that kit, explain a little bit how you flare a line, and then we'll physically do it. So hang on to your seats, and I'll be another riveting session right here at Thumbs Up Charter Services behind the scenes. Alright, so what I have here is a pretty standard brake line flaring toolkit. And brake lines are done in a method of what's called a two-step flare or double flare. So what we have is a fixture that actually, depending on what size of your line, will hold and clamp your brake line in place while we do this process. Okay? The second thing we have is what's called step one. If I can get it out of here, just get one of them out. It's a die that is inserted into the brake line tubing and then is compressed using this handheld screw type vise, if you will. Okay? Then that process continues by removing the die from the tubing, and then the vise is used directly to push and press on the flared end a second time, thus producing something called a double flare. Double flares are necessary in brake lines because of the high pressures that these lines carry. Typically, it varies in the industry and it varies on the application, but you can assume that at least 2,000, if not 3,000 pounds of pressure is applied through this tubing anytime that you step on your brakes. Okay? So, a lot of folks say, why don't you just compression? They make devices that actually are what we call compression fittings, that you put a bare line in either end of it and then you tighten up nuts on either side, and there's a brass bushing that is crushed onto the pipe, and that makes a connection. It's really not something you want to do with any amount of reliability on a brake line. You should double flare your brake lines all the time. So we do have a cutter in the kit to cut and trim the end of the line, and we're just going to get started here. We're going to show you what we're going to do and the steps required. So the first thing we got to do is, if you recall in the previous episode, we have a brake line that's running down the tongue of this trailer. And I left this new surge brake unit loose for that reason, so I could gain access in there to get to that brake line. Now, there was a couple things I was going to try to do with that brake line, because she's cut off flush. You'll see here in a minute. She was cut off flush when I sawzawed the end off of this trailer neck here the other episode, and I was surprised and discovered to find it, kind of relieved to find it, actually, to tell you the truth, because I was going to put in about 25 foot of brake line on this, because there was no brake line on the old surge unit. I thought, that they had cut it off and it was lost down the center of the trailer, or that had been completely removed. I just didn't see it. So we do have it. In fact, it's right here. See, I could pull on it. And there it is, and it looks in pretty good shape. The problem is, my idea at first was I was going to come back in here and I was going to try to back that line up and pop it out this hole and simply flare the end with a new fitting and put it on the surge unit. Well, I've tried already to pull that line back down the trailer frame, and it just snakes around too much in there. So what we're going to have to do, I can't move it backwards, but I can pull it slightly forwards, is we're going to have to set this up right here, and we are going to have to physically flare this line right where it exists here with a new fitting, threaded fitting. Then we'll use a coupler. So we're going to put this fitting on. Hold on here. Right here. We're going to put this new fitting on that brake line in the tongue of the trailer and flare so that we can connect it to this brass coupler and then install another line, which I bought deliberately way too long, to bring it back around and up through that hole to the surge unit. And we'll have to trim this line to fit and then flare it again. So you're going to see the flare process twice. Giving you guys a real close-up of what's going on here. What I had to do, and this was no easy feat because of the shortness of the line here, was the first thing I had to do was slide on the new threaded fitting so we can, before we do this flare, this first thing you want to do, don't make a flare and then go, oh man, I forgot to put the fitting on the line. Second thing is we put the fixture in, and we really had to struggle to get this into the fixture. It's so short. But we were able to do it. As you can see, this is marked 3/16. You have a quarter, 5/16, 3/8, and a half, depending on what size of the line you're working on. We're working with the smallest 3/16. The next thing is this little die that fits into the line that forms. See, that cup forms when we press on it. And you'll see this in a minute, that little cup right there. The thickness of this right here, if you can see that, of that base, that's how much line we want proud of this fixture, because that's the amount of material we need to make the flare. So once we've gotten this far, we double make sure, because we don't have any extra material here, that this is extremely tight on the line. In fact, it's a hand-tight thing, but we're going to make sure it's super tight because we don't have another chance at this. When you get ready to make your step one, your first flare of the two flare system, you take your little die here, and that little peg goes down into the line like that. Maybe I should put this back a little bit so you can see. All right? So there's that step. Then you come along with this, I will call it a, hold on here. Gotta get this thing in here just right. There we go. Yeah, I'm still on that side of the line. Come on now. Help a guy out. There we go. Need to undo this. This press, this hand threading press, I'll call it. Squisher, whatever you'd like to call it. And you put it into that die. Thread up on the fixture because it grabs the fixture. And you twist this thing until this die, hopefully you can see that. You thread this thing down until the edge of this die, right here, sits flush on this fixture, and that is your first flare. We're just going to give this thing a twist. Until we think we got it. Which we think it's there. You back it off. Take off your clamp, and we got our first flare right there. So we finished this up. See how it's all mushroomed in there? That's what we needed. So we complete the flare, or the second step, to make it a double flare by simply using the clamp or vise or squisher gadget, putting it in the pipe with the die removed, threading it up, tightening down, and it's really a matter of eye and skill, but you want to make sure that there we go, it's pretty tight, and that pushes that metal you folded back out and in, strengthening that flare for high pressure. Once you've done that, simple matter of removing your fixture, line holding fixture, loosening it up, taking it off, and we'll get you a good view of that right now that I've thrown my doggone. Oh, there it is. Thought it went way down there. But you can see right there, we have a flared end fitting for a brake line, ready to be connected, and we're going to do that right now. So we're going to go get a little brass connector, line connector, so we can connect another line to this. I'll try to do this so you can see it. I'm just going to thread him on there. And now things get a little bit easier once this is done, because I got a little bit more length here to play with. This was a tight one. And we're going to build from here. So the next thing we're going to do is come back over here to the table. I'm going to need to cut this line. And the reason why I'm going to need to cut this line is it's too long. So I got to take a measurement over there with the surge brake unit in place, figure out how long of a length of this 2-foot piece I'm going to need, and I'm going to have to cut it. We'll flare it and show that to you again so you get to see it a second time up close, and then we'll install this thing. So, word to the wise, I'm going to flare this after I insert this pipe into the frame through the drill hole I made, because this fitting is probably too big to get through that drill hole. Yeah, don't want to go drilling the frame any bigger than I have to. So we're going to get to that in the next step. All right, we're back. And as you can see, got a new piece of brake line in here that I've cut, fed in through the frame, measured it, brought it back up. We need to put a flare here at the end. We've got the fitting on it. Also, another word to the wise, you know, make sure you make your bends before you put your fitting on. Make sure that that nut has to be on either side of your bend, wherever it needs to be, otherwise you're not going to get it around it. To make a bend, I simply use various size sockets, so you don't kink the tube, because then everything's over with and you got to start over again. So what we're going to do is flare this end. Once we get that done, we'll connect it to the existing trailer brake tubing or plumbing. And then this tube, of course, comes through and around up here, and we'll connect to our master. And we should be done, hopefully, with the hydraulics. So you're going to see it live here, a little bit more up close, the procedure to flare one of these guys. Gotta get this on. Come on now. Get it up and in. Tubing up about where I need it. Measure what I have sticking out. That's too much. A little bit less. There we go. Whoops, had it. Right there, clamp it down. Give it a good and tight. Make sure it don't move on you. Double check your height on the pipe. Insert. Oh, hold on here. Forgot one thing. Got to deburr the end of that pipe. Okay, we deburred the end of this pipe here. So what we're going to do is put our dye in the end of it. This is going to be interesting. I'm probably going to have to raise you guys up a little bit. Make sure we don't miss this because I can't do it again. Do our first round of flaring. A little tight. There we go. Get it tight. The dye is flush to the fixture. Back it off carefully without bending your pipe. Oh boy. There we go. Remove your dye. You can see that you have the first step completed. Move in to complete the second step. All right, and that's not right. Come on now. Like I say, help a guy out. There we go. Okay, now we're gonna flare it. Second step, double flare. And you kind of know because it gets really tight. That's just about it. She's pretty well formed. Carefully back it off. Remove your fixture. And we have a perfectly flared brake pipe. So now we got to finish this bend. Connect the two, tighten it up. So I've bent it as far as I can with a socket in place. This is going to require just a little bit more very gentle forming. Put your fingers in here if you can. Keep it from kinking. All right, something like that. Twist it like that. Bring down your other line. Insert the new line. No, we're still off. Maybe something like that. And it just takes finesse. You just got to be patient until you can get it thread. Be careful of this brass because you will screw up the threads. And there you go. So when we get this hooked up, I got enough room to gently push this back in just to the edge of this frame to protect it from the trailer hitch. We should be in good shape. So we'll get a couple wrenches and tighten this up. Okay, if you guys remember when I was doing the brake shoe / drum assemblies with a backing plate I was putting them on, I was telling you to use the flare wrench for brake line, the special end compared to a normal wrench to keep that fitting from rounding out. So this is so tight I'm going to have to hold that back fitting steady with the flare wrench, and then I'm going to come in here and tighten up the brass fitting. You use a normal wrench on the brass fitting. Not too worried about that. Until we get her good and tight. And then we'll swap. Almost there. Alright, that's pretty good. And now if we can get this out, without mucking the whole thing up, which is really in there. Might need a power screwdriver to help us out. We just had the wrong attack angle on all this. There we go. Come on. There we go. Well, sometimes you win that way too. Now we'll come and tighten the front one up. Again, oops, flare wrench on the brake line. This time we can do the opposite. We'll hold the brass with our normal wrench and we'll tighten up the flared line. Don't over tighten this brass, just get it really good and snug. And that steel line will bite into that brass fitting on that flare we made, and it'll conform itself. And it's kind of designed to do that, so kind of like a assurance that you're not going to leak. There you go. Okay, that part of it's done. Get that out of the way. This out of the way. We need that bolt. Don't need that. Okay. We'll get the surge brake unit on it now. And you got to prepare the surge brake unit. So what I've done here is I've removed the access plate. This access plate off of the back of the surge unit that exposes that fitting with a red cap, dust cap on it. You want to pull that cap off. There it goes onto the floor. And what we're going to want to do, the easiest way to cheat this whole thing, I'm going to tell you right now, let's see where we're at here. I think we got enough room. Is simply tilt your surge unit up while you got it off. Put your line in the end of the fitting. Because it'll be a bear otherwise. You still got to bend and conform a little bit here. And get your line started into the back of that fitting, if it'll go. Just hold it right there for a second. And it's okay to use a normal wrench to start it, but you got to finish up with our favorite line flare wrench, okay? Because these wrenches are just a little bit easier to get into where you need them to get in. You gingerly start this thing. How much of this you're going to be able to see. Let's try this angle. Well, you could definitely see what I'm doing in there. Okay? You're going to want to start that fitting into that brass fitting. I know these things are such a tease, right? Make sure you have it cross-threaded. If you stop, you got to do this gently. If you stop, after you got a couple threads started, you're cross-threaded. Don't go farther. Okay, there it is. All right. So now, if we can, we're going to use the line wrench to tighten that fitting, that line up. Hold your fitting in the unit. Oh yeah, we got room. And give her good and tights. I want to smack the camera here. See if I can do that again. Come on. Nope, I don't want to do that. I want to do that. That should do it right there. Okay? So now, it's a simple procedure of getting our bolts in, and I did pick up another grade 5 bolt. There's one. Maybe with the other two. They're around here somewhere, I know it. Okay, got the bolts. Not sure about the nuts, but I got the bolts. Gotta make sure that you aren't snagging your brake line. There's two. Here's our new bolt we picked up at the hardware store today. Grade 5. See the 3 hashes. Other video, I don't know what I had on my brain. I was tired that day, I kept saying grade 3. Alright, there's your the 3 hashes is a grade 5. Got to use lock nuts on this, either Nylocks or the older style lock nuts. And how you know that these older style lock nuts are lock nuts is they'll have a round circle punched in the side of them. That deforms the threads and makes them a lock nut. 1, 2, we'll go over here and try to find our third one. Alright, found nut number 3. Safety glasses. Let's put their nut on here, and now we're going to final torque this thing because we got it finally all together. Always use an impact socket when using an impact wrench. Don't need chrome sockets to fly apart. It hurts you. 1. 2. 3. All right. She's on. She's hooked up. It's ready to be bled. That'll be our next step here. This should be fun. Bleeding these things, you don't have to hook them up to a vehicle. At least with the Dexter model. They are pretty novelly ingenious here. What they have is a hole right here. That's your bleed axis for service. If you can see in there, there's a little bracket. And what you do is you put your screwdriver in front of the bracket and you gently pull back and you have somebody hold this. That's like having your foot on the brake. So we'll have to fill her up with some fluid here, .3 fluid, and we're going to bleed these brakes and see what happens. Alright, it's time to bleed the reservoir, the master reservoir, and you remove the brake cap. Brake fluid, I went over a few things before, a couple things about it. I think I told you it was caustic and will lead paint, which it will, right off of a vehicle. And so you don't want to do that. You don't want to get this on anything. The other thing is hygroscopic, and hygroscopic means it likes moisture, and it will readily absorb moisture from the air. So always keep your bottles nice and tight. Make sure they're not too old, because eventually they'll get moisture in them. And of course, cover the reservoir even if you're not done bleeding this, which we won't be. We want to cover that reservoir to make sure that we keep moisture out, because honestly, I'm out of brake fluid. I did a brake job a month ago or so, and that was what was left of it. But we can at least bleed the master. What you're going to see is a bunch of bubbles come up back here, and we're going to gently stroke this screwdriver, okay, to actuate it. And you see those bubbles coming up. You just want to gently stroke it, not full cycle it. But you want to keep doing it until you get all the bubbles out, which we just did just about. We still have a couple coming out. So we're going to keep doing it until we don't see it. Something like that. Let me give it a longer stroke, get more bubbles out. And you got to keep doing this until you don't see any bubbles. So this is basically like bleeding the master per the directions. And it looks like we're pretty well bled. Now, one thing you don't want to do is rapidly cycle this screwdriver, okay? because what that's going to do is going to aerate the fluid. You're getting a bunch of foam in here. Then you got to let it set a couple hours, because you're just going to suck air bubbles, minute air bubbles right back through. You'll never get it bled. So I'm just slowly going back and forth with this, letting it take up the slack here for a minute, and then doing it again. And I think we're pretty good here. So that's about where we're going to go today. We're going to continue the video with bleeding the system at the wheel cylinders out in the back of the trailer. It's getting kind of dark and I'm out of brake fluid, and Lord knows I could use a shot and maybe a fruit roll up for dinner or something. Who knows? Captain's dinners can get quite interesting. We're back with you here, and we're going to bleed these brakes. Told you in the beginning I was going to try to do it myself, but that plan didn't work out. So I have my trusty assistant Steve here, who is going to apply the brakes for us. So really the choice to do here is to do the longest circuit on the brake system, which in this case, the brake lines come down the other side of the boat here. So this is the left-hand side of the boat. We're going to try bleeding this left rear wheel first, and that is the longest brake line in the vehicle. So we'll get the most air out of it that way. Got quite a rainstorm going on here. So we just had a hellacious thunderstorm here. We're getting a lot of rain today here, and we couldn't hear each other in the garage. We had to stop, literally. But anyways, we got the system bled. I don't know if you see the brake fluid in this tin. Got clean fluid through there because there was none in the system, because it was in need of repair for a long time. But what I'm going to do now here, I'm going to stop here in a minute and set up the camera here. We're going to see if this thing works. We're going to try rotating the tire while Steve holds the brakes in the on position. Okay, Steve, ready?
Ready?
All right, go ahead and hold. Okay, let holding.
Yep.
All right, let go. All right, hold, tell me.
Holding. Holding.
All right, they're gripping. Okay, let go. All right, I'm going to call that good because we can't get a full force of the actuation of the master, but they're grabbing. So I think we've won. We're going to call this good. What's going to tell us is the test drive when we take it out, and that'll be a little bit of time, but at least this job is done. So, hey, we appreciate you watching. It's Captain Karl Burnside, Thumbs Up Charter Services at Thumbs Up Charters Behind the Scenes. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Tomorrow we're going to tackle the rollers on this trailer, and that's going to be really exciting because we got a lot of work to do on this one, probably maybe a little bit more than the brake episodes. So until we talk to you again, if we can give you a charter or sign you up for a charter, visit us at www.thumbsupcharter.com for our website. You can fill out a form there, contact form, and we'll get back in touch with you. Give us a call at 810-513-6073, or you can get a hold of us on the Google at Thumbs Up Charter Services in Sebring or Bayport, Michigan. Take care, folks. Stay dry. Have a good night. We'll see you soon.